Here we go, gearheads. This week, we're putting a transmission cooler on the Vandal. Like I was saying in my last video, in my opinion, a transmission cooler is a must for these Chevy trucks. These half tons, with anything with a 4L60E, well, living in the South, I would say almost any vehicle. You know, they come with an internal cooler in the radiator, but it just doesn't do the job, in my opinion, especially in Texas. It gets hot. It gets hot. So I'm not going to be babying the truck around. That's going to add some heat. I may pull a car. Actually, what's going to be happening is here in a couple days, I'm taking the car trailer up and I'm going to go pick up a vehicle. It won't have an engine or trans in it, but still got weight. And that's strain on a 60E. It's going to create heat, which is going to take away life. Actually, we got a little diagram I'll show you here that was the brand Durell that they provided. It shows you an example of how the heat will take away from life of the transmission. So in my opinion, you should never have, I would never have a 4L60E vehicle without an external transmission cooler added on. You're just asking for a shorter life on that transmission. It seems like every vehicle, and it happens before 100,000 miles, but I would say if you got 100,000 miles on your 60E, I'd be preparing to swap it out and replace it. Actually, this truck has 130,000 miles, which is like new for the engine. The engine lasts forever. It's the 60E transmissions that burn up. They're not strong. They get hot. They die. Actually, I have no problems with my transmissions right now in this truck. It's got 131,000 miles, and I have no problems with the transmissions. But I believe in it so much that it's going to give out on me soon. I've already bought a core. Got one sitting right here. I've got a core transmission. I'm getting ready to clean up, and I'm going to rebuild just for the preparation of when it goes out. It's going to go out. That's what happens. But I'm going to get a cooler on there, try to make it last as long as I can make it last. We'll be good to go. Let me start off showing you what we've got here. All right, this one you're looking at here, this is a transmission cooler, external. It came off, I got it from a junkyard. It came off probably a 3/4 ton. Those are the brackets that came on it. And that's how they look. You know, it's got it cheap. Actually, I probably got it about free. But this is how they were mounted, these brackets here and there. And these were the lines that went to it, though someone did cut the end of it. But this would work. Even if you have, some of these trucks came with coolers on it. If you do have it, your transmission is going to last longer than most. But as hard as I play with the trucks, I know I'm going to need more cooler than that. So I'm going to step it up, and I want an aftermarket Durell. There it is, Durell Performance. An aftermarket transmission cooler. You see two here because one I've had it for a while. I've had it sitting around, and this is the one I'm going to put on the Vandal. This is the brand new one that came in the box, and I'm going to put that on the Tahoe. They're both got 60Es. They're both going to need a transmission cooler. But if you want to go extreme, these are about, what, 50 bucks? Not too bad, not bad at all. When you buy it, comes in this box, shows you different styles, all the different fittings that you could use depending on how you want to do this. Comes with a hose, a couple clamps, fitting, and then one way of mounting it, which is a way I don't prefer, but it'll work. It's kind of like a zip tie. You push it through the radiator and it kind of pinches it to the radiator with foam pads in there. But I got a couple other ways. Well, I'll show you. I got another way I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan on copying what they did from the factory here in some type of way and making a mount for it, bolting it to the metal that's there. I don't know how this is going to work. I haven't done it before, but I know that we're going to make it work. So yeah, just in case, I picked up some metal. That one was probably too thin, so I grabbed one that was wider, thicker than it needs to be, but wider. Picked up some self-tapping screws, which usually aren't the ideal for some people. They like to use a bolt and a nut, but I've found that a bolt and nut can just be annoying sometimes, and all you need is a screw depending on how thick the metal is. Picked up an extra 4 feet of hose. That filter came with 4 feet, but I also picked up an extra 4 feet just in case. One question that we're going to come into is how are we going to connect the hose to the hard line that's on the vehicle, and that I haven't decided yet until I get in there. Also, I want to do it in a way that most people would be able to, because I got a few options here. One, of course, you clamp the hose here with a hose clamp, just like this one was before. And then on the hard line, they make a compression fitting. This comes apart, it'll slide onto your hard line that's on the vehicle after you cut it. So you cut it off and you want to tap into it. It'll slide on there, you tighten it down, and it'll compress, lock onto that hard line and not leak, so that you can put your hose on the other side instead of just sliding your hose on it and clamping it down. So that's one option. The other option I've been wanting to play with is these JIC fittings. I probably don't have the right fitting I need here, but it gives you an idea. You know, I can flare the hard line and or even crimp a fitting onto the rubber hose. But I'm probably not going to go this route today because I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it in a way that most people will do it, which is actually the way the directions show it. The directions show this weird thing. Doesn't say for sure that it's going to fit in this vehicle, but we'll find out. Screw that into the radiator. Okay, you'll have two lines on the radiator. You'll take the one coming out of the radiator. So you'll have a feed going in with a hot coolant, transmission fluid going in, and then you'll have a line with it coming out. What am I doing with my hands? How about we show you this picture right here? See if you can see that. You'll have hot transmission fluid going in the radiator, and then it says generally, we'd have to verify on this vehicle which way is the actual feed. I'll show you the way I'm going to do it. And then where the line comes out, they want you to put in a fitting like this and then just clamp a hose onto that line, and then to take the line that you've removed to put that fitting in and clamp your other hose onto it. That's what they want you to do. But this is a bunch of words that probably aren't making much sense. So how about we get in there and take it apart and see what happens. We'll start in this area here. Take off this panel, pull out the grill, and look at the area in there where we're going to mount the cooler. Now, to get this plastic cover off, we need to pull out all these plastic pins that hold it in place. Usually you'll just have a flathead screwdriver. You'll pry them out with a flathead screwdriver. It's a bit of a pain, but it can be done. Actually, using two flathead screwdrivers is one way to do it, but they make a tool for them shaped like this. Makes it a lot easier. It pulls up on both sides of it so you don't destroy the plastic pin and have to go buy new ones. And that's what I'll be using today. Just slide it under the head of the plastic pin like this, wiggle it, pry it up. There you go. It's much easier than using a flathead. Set a little tray over there to hold my pins. I'll make sure to put a link to this tool in the description below. Sometimes the whole thing will come out like this. Sometimes just the pin that's in the center. It doesn't matter. As long as you get this pin in the center out, that's what's putting pressure to hold it in. Once you got them all out, it'll lift up and take it off. Now we're going to take the grill off. Looks like we got a bolt here, a weird looking screw here. Looks like you put a Phillips in there and turn it about a quarter turn to the left, and that'll pop off. And then down low you'll have push clips, so you just pull it off. Let me get my socket for that. Pull out the 10 mil here. Now use the Phillips for these weird little locking clips. Turn left, it unlocks. Same thing on the other side. Now it's loose there. Now the sides appear to be held on, just snapped in. So we'll grab the edge of it and pull it out, just like that. Put your fingers in there, grab the edge. Pulls out. I see at the bottom it's got the same weird Phillips screw on the bottom as well. We need to unlock that. Let me get a longer screwdriver. Now you're not going to be able to see these at the bottom here. There's two last clips I need to get off, but when you get in there, they're the same as they are on the top up here. you have to turn that quarter and turn because they got hooks in there that grab behind it. So I'm going to use a long Phillips screwdriver to reach the ones on the bottom and turn them a quarter turn to make them release, which I probably should have done before I pulled the ends off, but it's okay. I didn't break anything yet. There we go. Those are released. Let's see if we got anything else. Oh, that's it. That gets the grill off. Now we've got full access to mount the transcooler however we want. Like I said in the book there, it wanted us to put it against the condenser or the radiator and use those, I don't even know what they're called. They look like zip ties, so I call them zip ties. But they push through the cooler and the radiator and snap them together like a zip tie. I'm not going to use that though. I never like those too much. You can, I mean, I'm not saying there's something wrong with them. I just don't like them because they start messing with the fins and they rub. Don't like the way they work. But here, you can see how the factory transmission cooler that I picked up, how it would bolt right up. So if you went to the junkyard and you want to do it the budget way and you don't want to spend the money and get a bigger one, having something's better than nothing. So you go grab one from the junkyard with the brackets. These holes, there's already holes up there for it. Metal clips to hold them. These metal clips. Oh yeah, so that means the bracket would go behind it. That would all bolt up just like that. But we're not going with this cooler. Just wanted to show you how that looked. We're gonna go get the big dog cooler. Here's the cooler we'll be using. Still got fluid in it, leaking everywhere. But let's see how it fits. And what we're gonna have to move and what we're gonna have to modify. Gonna be close. It looks like I need to be behind this bar. Let me get these clamps off and see what we got now. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this bracket off to give us room to fit that big cooler in there. 10 millimeter socket again. Excuse my tongue tie. That easy. 2 millimeter bolts, that falls down. It's out the way. Now we have room to try to test fit this again. This looks like we're coming close to that latch. So it'll probably be a wise idea, instead of trying to put it this way like I am, flip it around. That way it pushes it back towards the condenser and not towards the latch. Oh yeah, that's plenty of room. I can still fit my fingers between the condenser and the transmission cooler. Probably be able to put this back up. Let's see what we got here. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, since I'm going to have to think about how I'm going to bolt it, pause the camera for a minute, figure out where my mounting locations are going to be, mark the spots and get ready to start drilling holes so I can secure the cooler at the top and at the bottom here. I'll be back. And here's what I've decided. This cooler has to mount on the back side of that latch bracket. It's no big deal. Also, like we showed earlier, there's already 2 holes right there. So what I'll do is mark those 2 holes on this upper lip here. See, there's nothing on that lip. So mark the holes on that lip and go ahead and drill the holes on this bracket. Now that I flipped this upside down, this is able to fit in and out. You saw earlier when it was the way it came from the factory, it wouldn't fit in there, but it goes in and out now. So let me mark these holes and drill them. And I need to figure out how I'm going to secure them. Now, I feel like I'm cutting corners by using a self-tapping screw, though it will work fine. If you don't give a crap, which normally I don't, I would just use that. But I'm trying to think of other options, so maybe you could consider others if you want. Some people really like it to look clean and be well, so you know, use a bolt and a nut to hold it up there. You could do that. The only stupid thing, excuse me, let me not say stupid, the only negative of using a bolt and a nut, then you got to hold the nut on the back side, and that would be annoying. I might be able to take the hardware off of that factory cooler and put it up there. Let me check that out. So here's the pieces off the factory cooler. Transmission cooler off of the 2500. Of course, this truck didn't have one. There's the bolt holes for them. And then this clip usually snaps on to the cooler. It looks like, I'll go ahead and drill a hole there. We'll be able to use it the same way. I know not everybody's going to have that, but there's your option. If you want to snag some from a junkyard, you can do that. You can use the self-tapping screw to hold it. You know, just drill a hole here a little bit smaller so the self-tapping screw will fit through here, and then grab on the cooler on the back side in there. Or use your bolt, lock washer, and nut, hold it all together. It's up to you. But let me go mark these holes now. There we go. Drill the 2 holes, took the clips, I'm gonna snap them on over the hole. There's the other clip. Look at that. Almost like it was made to be there. That's pretty solid. She's in there good like that. Of course, it would be wise to secure the bottom. Now we just need to figure out how. But that's good progress so far. Let me check out the bottom now. I'm doing projects like this, I try to keep it simple and leave the welding out or anything that is not commonly owned. So, you know, I could, if I have to in the end, I'll take a piece of metal like this, take it across down here, bolt it up. But before we go and skip to that, let's try to use what we have here. What I'm going to do, take this bracket off, see if maybe I can move it down a little bit. You'll see here in a second what I'm thinking, because we got this lip down here just like we had a lip up there, but we need a bolt to that lip. I don't want to make a 90-degree angle there or anything. You can get creative and come up with your own idea. Well, there's a will, there's a way. We'll figure it out. Get that off. Let's see if there's room here to take it down any further, lower. Not really. Now, one thing I don't like about leaving this bracket here and just making an L bracket or some type of way to secure the bottom is because you're kind of defeating the purpose to an extent. I mean, it's not drastic, but look how much of the transmission cooler you're covering up. That much, what, an inch of it? What'd you get a big cooler for if you're going to cover it up with this bar? So this bar has definitely got to move. All right, so that's it. That's my answer. What I got, I just bought some stock from a hardware store. It says it's solid flats, 1/8 inch thick, 36 inches long, 3/4 wide, plain steel. Definitely don't need the whole 36 inches, but I'll cut it to length and run it right across where I want it, right there. Secure it on both bars here, secure it here, be good to go. We go cut this. Now, in case anybody was wondering, I just realized this is aluminum. That's cool, save some weight. I believe that's aluminum as well. So instead of using the steel like I have, you can pick up a piece of aluminum. You might want to get some thick aluminum though, so it doesn't flex, because if it's just straight, it'll be easier to bend. I guess you could get angle iron or angle aluminum with a 90-degree angle in it for strength, like this is. But your choice, wherever you want. Just thought I'd bring that up and throw it out there. This is aluminum. All right, I'm going to use steel though, because that's what I have. I'm not going to drive all the way to the store just for that. So we have steel. I've already cut it to length. What was it, 25¼ inches, I believe. And then I just lined it up even with this bottom bar of the transmission cooler. Went ahead and drilled holes in the end of it. I did a little pilot hole in the bracket as well. And remember, since this is aluminum, it's going to strip out easy depending on what you're going to do, how you're going to secure it. There's not much room behind the bar here to put a nut. So I'm rolling with the self-tapping screws. So I'm going to do on the holes on the crossbar that I made them large enough to where the screw will fit through. I just did a pilot hole in the bracket on the truck, and I'll let the self-tapping part go ahead and cut it the rest of the way out and then catch thread. And we'll do a little cut the threads first before I put the bar on. So I'm going to use my impact, little 3/8 impact, stick it in the hole like that. go. Go easy on it so you don't strip it out. Looks good. Actually, I'll go ahead and set this side, hang this side down here like this. Also check the length on the self-tapping screws to make sure that they weren't going to go through all the way through the other side and hit the condenser. Get you those numbered measurements here in a minute, the size of the screws. Now if you don't know what's going on here, the little pilot hole just helps with everything. You know, I have a smaller hole than what I'm actually going to use. That's what I had put there originally. But I have a self-tapping screw. It's got kind of like a drill bit on the end. It's not really a drill bit, but a cutting end. So it cuts it out to the diameter that it needs to be, and then it goes ahead and cuts its own threads. That's what just happened right there. Now we got our bar on there where we want it. Now we just need holes for the bottom of the transmission cooler. Figure out how we're going to mount that together. Looks good. The self-tapping screws I'm using, size 10-16 by 3/4. That's 3/4 of an inch long. It costs like $5 for a box of 50. These they're a little bit small, but they look like they'll do the job. The good thing there is though, if you accidentally strip it out, since it's aluminum, don't worry, because they make one bigger, make them with more thread also. You can go ahead and go up to the next size if you accidentally strip it out. Well, since I'm already on a roll with these self-tapping screws, so I'm gonna go ahead and do here too. I want to get this job done tonight. And when you're recording, it takes you about 4 times as long to do it. So we're gonna use 2 more here and here. I'll mark it in a second. Go ahead and drill it. I'm gonna oversize drill this bar again and let the self-tapping screw thread into the transmission cooler to hold it up on each side. Put 2 here like that. And we'll drill those holes. I'll be back. Alright, got the holes drilled. Let's bolt it back up so we can mark for the holes to drill in the transmission cooler. So we'll go ahead and, no pilot hole this time. Just go ahead and use the self-tapping screw to tap into the cooler. There it is. Pretty secure. Let's see how much flex it has. There's not that much flex in it at all, actually. It's pretty secure. That's it. Transmission cooler is mounted. That's a big Mogetta. Here, let me hold up the other one next to it. Let me go get it. So here's the comparison. If you decided to go with the junkyard pull off, maybe how big it is. If you went with aftermarket, you get that much more cooling. Up north, you guys might not have to worry about this too much, but down here in the south, whew, transmission killers. This is gonna be nice. All right, so it's mounted. Now it's time to get the hoses ran. See how we're gonna run that. And it looks like we need some black paint on here. Let me fix that. Yeah, if y'all have never noticed before, usually this black paint wears off and you can see it through the grill and it just stands out. It doesn't look very good. Probably need to go through and do the whole radiator now, or condenser. Now it's time to figure out how we want to run the hose. I got one that'll connect here from the bottom, one on that side. I figure out how I'm going to make clearance for it. There's a piece of plastic there. Let me move the camera so you can see. Not only run the hose, but we have to figure out, it's actually easy. I mean, you could just pick one, whatever you prefer, but I, of course, make it complicated sometimes trying to pick which route I'd like to take on connecting these hoses. Now, some people will remove the transmission cooler lines from the radiator and only run it through the external cooler. But the recommended version on there, and probably what I'll do, is go ahead and run through the cooler first, the internal cooler on the radiator, and then through this one. But let me move the camera so you can see more. If you come up here on the passenger side, give it a look down. There we go. I'll be able to see a little bit better now. See this top hose here? That is your transmission cooler hose from the factory going into the radiator at the top. And then the other one, the same color down there, is your bottom one. So I should actually remove all this stuff to see them. So what it says is, Usually the one at the bottom is your feed into the cooler, into the radiator cooler. And then the one at the top is the return back to the transmission. Now to verify this, you should verify it, because what they want you to do is take the one that's a return from the radiator, so it means it's already been cooled down some by the radiator. Take the return, splice into it to run to the external cooler. The way it recommends to find out which one's your feed and return is to crank the engine up, let it warm up, and then touch it and see which one's hot. The one that's hotter will be the feed into the radiator, and then the cooler one will be the return. But I'm not gonna sit here and get the engine hot. I'll probably just remove a line, crank it up, see which way it sprays out, makes a mess everywhere. Sounds like a faster idea. Now before we do this, make a mess everywhere, of course make sure you get some cardboard down so you don't ruin your driveway. Get a pan, catch the crud. And what I want to do is, so y'all can see better, normally I'd probably just reach in there and do it without, but I'm going to remove some stuff here, remove the filler tube. I'm going to set the camera up on a stand so you can see, remove some things so you can see what's going on. If you weren't going to run through the radiator and just bypass it, it would be a lot easier. You come from the bottom. Speaking of from the bottom, we're going to have to remove this splash shield here, whatever you want to call it, skid plate. Remove that to get to the lines, because you see behind it is where the transmission cooler lines are. So if you weren't going to go through the radiator, you could just cut them right there and splice into them. It'd be easier. But I think I'll go ahead and go through the radiator like it's supposed to be. I'm thinking about going through the radiator because, yes, we want it cooler, right? Just like you want the engine to run cooler. Heat kills. But what I'm thinking is also too cool is probably not a great idea. On the transmission, not necessarily too bad of an idea. But, like say in the winter time, radiator help keep it a little bit warm. Actually, none of that even matters. I don't really have a good reason to explain it. I just think it's a good idea that for this truck, it's not a race truck. If this is a race truck, I probably wouldn't use a radiator. For this truck, I'm gonna use both. I think they'll work well together. It just seems like the right thing to do. Something back in my brain saying it, and that's what I need to do. That's what I'm gonna do. Now, remove this filter piece here with the 8mm socket. Use the impact, makes it faster. Real fast. Doing this mainly so that you can see what's going on, what I'm doing, and where these lines are ran in case you don't know. Plastic, or the rubber sticks onto the plastic over time, so you gotta break it loose, spin it, turn it. There it goes. Also, you see this plastic clip here usually pushes into here to hold the upper radiator hose up. Gotta pull that out. One clamp here, another clamp here. Actually, this happens often. It stays on the throttle body. Don't try to put it back on with it on the throttle body. You gotta take it off. Put it back on here first before you put it back on. So it's got a groove in it. Put it back on like that. So that way you put it on, you just slide it back on. Now let's head underneath here, show you the skid plate. Grab my tools, go ahead and pull this off so that we can get a good look at the lines from underneath as well. 15 mil. Now we can see something. That's them right there, those two lines you see. Those are the two transmission cooler lines coming from the transmission. So it'd be easy. If you were just going to bypass the radiator, you could cut them both here and just clamp on hose and run it up to your external cooler. We're back up here at the top again. I got a light this time. Now you can see the bottom hose better going into the radiator. First, I'm going to assume that they're right and the bottom one's the feed, but I'm going to show you how they come out because some people don't know. You pull this plastic clip back first, like that. It's just a plastic cover. And then I use just a small flathead. And there's a clip right here. believe it's called an E-clip. Some people call it a cuss word. But you look for a little edge you see sticking out and catch it like that. See how it started to come up? Now, as you're getting it out, at this point you need to get your hand around it because it's going to fly. And that's why they call it a cuss word. There it is right there. Once you take that clip out, set it aside so you don't lose it. Make sure your drain pan is below because a little bit of fluid will probably come out. That's it though. It just pulls out. Just like that. I'm going to put it back in for now. And do the same thing to the bottom one. I did that to the top so you can see how it's done. But I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom one. And then crank it up and see if the fluid comes out of the line or out of the radiator. If it comes out of the radiator, you know that's the return line. And that's the one we want. Now to put this back in is a little bit tricky too because it tries to get caught in the holes. It snaps on just like a regular clip. Just got to get it in the right position first. Just like that. Sometimes using the fight head will help put it in too, but that's it, it's on. Line doesn't come out. Put this little plastic thing back over it, and that's good. All right, so let me do it to the bottom now. Pull the line out. It's draining right now, but I got remote start on this vehicle, so I'm going to crank it quickly and then turn it back off. I want to see where it's coming out of. One thing, not going to run very well without the since the air filter tube's not on it, so we're going to unplug the MAF, which is right here. Unplug that. If you unplug that, it'll run fine. Might throw a MAF code, but it'll run fine. If you don't unplug it, you're going to notice it. Remember, do this at your own risk. Be safe. Be careful. You got your fan clutch over there in your belt. You don't want to get your hands caught in it. This is not the right way to do it. This is the way I'm going to do it. You want to do it the right way, do it like the instructions say. Crank it up and see the top one or the bottom one, which one gets warm. The one that is warmer is the feed line. All right, got it where you can see? Yep, okay. Now let's crank it up. Put my thumb over it so it doesn't spray everywhere. All right. That's definitely the feed line. Put that back in there. So what we got out of that was that the bottom line is the feed line, top line is return. Main reason I chose to test off the bottom line is because either way fluid is going to come out. I'd rather it come out down low so it sprays from there down instead of come out up high and spray everywhere from up here and down low. So we verified that's the feed, this is the return. Return is the one that we want to run to the external cooler. And that is what their diagram shows. It shows their feed, the red line, coming into the bottom of the radiator, coming out the top, into the transmission cooler, out the cooler, back to the return line to the transmission. By running it through the radiator first, that's going to cool it down as much as the radiator can, and usually your engine's running at 200 to 230 degrees, so it can cool it down to that amount. Running it out of the radiator to the external will be able to cool it down more. So what I'm going to do now is follow the return line down to the bottom so I know which one's which down there. This line here on top is the return line that we need to tap into. Few ways we can do this. I mean, it's all optional, it's up to you. The way that their kit suggests is using their fitting and disconnecting this one from the radiator up top and running our hose all the way up there. But it would be a lot easier if we just spliced into it here, and there's a few ways you can do that. Here's one example. You have a fitting like this, compression fitting. So you could cut this, probably cut a section out. So you got a section already facing towards the front where your cooler is, so you could cut it back here, put your compression fitting on there. You got a nice barb for your hose to attach to. And then do the same thing over here. to attach to the other side of your cooler hose too. What most people are probably going to do though is just cut a section out of here and hose clamp it straight onto that line. The only negative, I mean, it'll work fine. The only negative though that I've seen in the past of just cutting that and hose clamping directly onto that is a lot of times you'll get seepage. You'll get some transmission fluid, like not enough to make your transmission fluid low, but it just leaks and it's kind of nasty. I'm still trying to decide which route I want to go. Like I was saying earlier, I'd really like to make a nice fancy hydraulic line for it, but I don't have enough fittings to do it the way I need to do it, so we're going to go another route tonight. Now this is the fitting that came with the transmission cooler. What they want you to do, assuming it fits, I should probably pull that out for y'all just to see if it fits for y'all. I don't really want to run this route. I'm not going to actually, because running a hose all the way up here is not ideal. You need a lot more hose, and then you got flexible hose up here in the engine bay. I don't want it really. But you know, pulling that fitting out for y'all so that you can see if this actually fits in a GM transmission. But they want you to screw it into there. In place of that fitting, you screw it in, and then you can clamp your hose onto this. So I'll test it for you. Now here's that fitting that just came out of the radiator. Okay, so the whole point in doing that was to see if this fitting that they provided with the cooler was going to work in this transmission, and it's not. That's too small. It's not going to work in there. You'd have to have an adapter or something. That's not going to work. So ideally what they want you to do, or if you had an adapter, you'd screw this in there, and once it was in there, you would take your rubber hose, slide it on the end here, and clamp it. We're not doing that. Next, here's the plan. What we do is we got to cut this line to splice into it. You see this angle here? It faces towards the front where the hose is already. I'm gonna cut back here so it's already headed in the right direction. That way we're not over here somewhere and have to loop it back towards the front. This one's already pointed towards the front. So I'll cut that line about there, and I'll cut it over here as well so it's pointed towards the front. We're gonna cut it with the line cutter. Looks something like this, if you can see that. There's one side cut. Now for the other side. There we go. You see the piece that's been cut out? It's done. Throw it away. This is where we'll run one hose and then run the other hose up here to this one. Deburring the ends of the hose you just cut. It's a good idea, but I don't have anything to deburr them with. I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver and twist it around in there. See if I can clean anything out. It should help to deburr the inside of it at least. Fluid running out, help wash that out. Like I was saying earlier, here's where you have an option. The majority of people I'd put money on are just going to slip the hose directly on this line like this and clamp it down. But sometimes that seeps and I just don't really like it. So I'm gonna try out these. They look to be a good fitting, the compression fitting. They have a nice barb on the end for the hose to fit on. When you clamp it, that's not gonna leak. But first we gotta put the compression fitting side on. Here's how it's gonna work. You open this up. Don't lose that little piece in there. So first we'll slide this nut on. slide it back, and you take the brass compression piece, little sleeve, slide it on there. Can you see it on the line there? Alright. Now we'll take this fitting and get a better angle here. Slide that fitting on the hose, on the line, excuse me, as far as it goes. Push the compression fitting up, the nut up. Start the nut. Let me grab a wrench. These fittings are standard. We're going to use 11/16 and a 5/8. Hold this side still, keeping it pushed on the line. And then tighten up the other side. From there, you take the other fitting that comes with it, with the barb for the hose. And I need to put some Teflon tape on the threads, but you'll screw it on. I have a good barb for your hose to seal on when you push it on. Go on like that. Before we do that though, let's do the other line. I've applied some Teflon paste, actually too much, but you get the gist of it. After you got your Teflon paste, is like Teflon tape, it's just a paste instead of a tape. Then you'd screw your fitting on, slide your hose on. Actually, make sure your hose clamp is on your hose first, and then slide your hose on. But the reason I'm not showing that right now is because I'm going a different method. I'm going to crimp it. Same thing, sliding the hose on, but it's the same fitting. I slid it into the hose already. Then I put a sleeve on it and I crimped it. I got a special tool that crimps. I'd rather do the crimp because it's less likely to leak like a hose clamp, and it looks better. But it's the same thing. It's just that hose slid into one of these and then crimped around it. So let me get this other hose together. Now before we tighten these hoses down and hook them up the rest of the way, we'll go ahead and make a path for them to get up to the transmission cooler. The hoses come out of the trans cooler right here and here. So there's a piece of plastic right here, but directly underneath it is metal. I'm going to drill a hole here and here in the plastic for the hoses to go through for the cooler. So just line up where the nipple is. Nipple's there. Come over to the plastic, go through, and test to make sure the hose fits through. And we're good. Now for the other hole. Now we've got the holes for the hoses. Go ahead and grab the hose, feed it through the hole. Make sure you cut it to the length you want it. Route them the way you want it before you cut. Now before you push it on the cooler, you want to make sure you put your hose clamps on and put them on in a direction where you'll be able to reach them still once you push it on. Something that'll help them push on is some transmission fluid. Grab your drip pan, stick your finger in it. Some in there, maybe some on the tip of the nipple of fitting you're about to push it on. It's a very tight fit, but that's what you want. That's how we keep it from leaking. And push both sides on. Once you got the hoses pushed on, go ahead and move your hose clamp up in place and tighten it down. Now the install is done. all we need to do is make sure we don't have any leaks. Show you what it looks like underneath. I ran the hoses over that bar there. And I decided to zip tie them to that bar as well to help secure them some. Everything's done. Let's crank it up and see if we have any leaks. I let it run for a little bit longer, didn't see any leaks, issues, so I'm going to slap it back together. It just goes back together like it came apart, so I'm not going to go step by step. I'm just going to slap it together and fast forward through this. Make sure you don't forget to plug the map back in. That's it. We're done for the night. We got the large external transmission cooler on. What you want to do, of course, keep an eye out for leaks the next couple of days just to make sure. But before that, tonight or the next time you drive it, get the engine running. Operating temperature is when I prefer it, but I guess you could do it while it's cold. But crank it up, get it running. That's how you check the transmission fluid. It's probably going to be a little bit low, because now you got to fill the capacity of the transmission cooler plus whatever I spilt over there on the ground. But check it, make sure it's low. You don't want your fluid low, you'll be killing it that way also, right? Now before I shut this video down, let me go ahead and take you over here and do a little overview of the parts and the tools I used. Of course, I'm going to list them all out in the video description as well, but let me show them to you. Here we are. This is the overview of everything, as long as I didn't forget anything, that we used in this video. It's at the end of it actually, and this is that extra cooler. So let me go over them. We got the transmission cooler, part number 13504. Don't worry, you don't have to write this down. They're all going to be in the video description below, and a link to where you can get them as well. See, these, we got each one of these package was the compression fitting that I put on the hard line so that I could put the rubber hose on. This is the box of 4 foot of rubber hose. You don't need to get this extra box. Well, it depends on how far you need to run your lines, but the trans cooler comes with 4 feet of transmission hose, so you should be good. I didn't wind up using this extra box. I got it just in case, so I had enough. I didn't want to get it halfway done and not be able to finish. But if you need another 4 feet, same brand, it's part number 13003. Now for the compression fittings, I had to use standard wrenches. I used a 3/4, 11/16, and 5/8. The long Phillips screwdriver, that was to get to those bottom 2 clips. Screws, clips, whatever you want to call them, they're weird looking, on the bottom of the grill to get the grill out. Flathead to pop off all those little plastic rivets that hold the plastic on top by the radiator, or even better, I didn't really use a flathead. This is the tool that I used, and I'll put that in the description. Small flathead in case you need to take those E-clips out or anything. These are always handy to have for any job really. 10 millimeters is what most of those little bolts were, so we got a 10 mil. 15 was for the skid plate underneath the vehicle. Little 8 mil is what I used to take off the clamps that were holding the throttle, the air intake tube on. 8 mil. I like to use the impact as you saw, so I got a little adapter for it. Clips right into the impact. Able to put my sockets on the impact. This is a cutter, line cutter. That's what I used to cut the line so I could splice into it with the hose. And then the step bit is what I drilled my holes with. You saw it at the end there, drilling holes through the plastic for the rubber hose. Threw a little black paint on the front. I was going to say that's it, but of course you're going to need a transmission funnel to fill up your transmission fluid. That's it for this video. I hope you all get yourself a transmission cooler and keep them 60Es alive. Actually, any transmission can really benefit from a transmission cooler, but keep them cool and keep the transmissions going so we can keep on hot rodding. That's it, gearheads. That's all that I have for this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope you go ahead and take care of your transmission, especially if you have a 60E. Get you a cooler, and if you're hot rodding around, you're going to want it for sure. Since this install video was made, I've gotten a chance to test it out a little bit. I made a 4-hour trip, 270 miles, hauling this donor parts vehicle. It had no engine or trans in it, but it was still a good test on the transmission and engine. It was roughly 65 degrees outside, and I never saw temperatures above 150 degrees on the transmission. So it looks like it's doing its job, and I'm happy with the results so far. I look forward to seeing what it does this summer. All right, gearheads, that's all that I have for you today. Remember, if you like what I'm doing and you want to see more, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below. And always remember, be productive and keep on wrenching. If you want something, you've got to make it happen. It's not going to happen by itself. Stop wishing, start doing.